Hey guys, this is double wide 6, and what I'm doing today is I'm still working on this air compressor. I found a couple leaks in the compressor itself, so I'm putting on a new gasket kit on this M-Glow compressor. So there's a head and there's pistons in here. I'm going to take all this apart and replace the gaskets. I mainly noticed my leaks on the bottom, and there's a breather down here that I already took off. I got a replacement breather. So I think I have about $20 here in gaskets and parts, and I'm going to put that on and change out the oil and see if that gets everything fixed up. So we'll see what happens. I'm also having an issue. I put a new engine on, and as this compressor runs, it's supposed to get up to about 120 psi, and then it should kick down to idle, and apparently the engine isn't strong enough to run at idle speed. It'll idle for a little bit and then die. So I think the compressor, I'm hoping there's a lot of compression in it, so maybe by changing the oil and doing this gasket kit, that'll take care of those symptoms. So we're just going to go through it and look at everything. First thing I need to do is unhook these hoses. I'm going to loosen that up, loosen this up, and then there are, looks like 6 bolts, and that should pull our head off. And then there's some lower bolts down here that we need to pull off. We'll pull that off and clean everything, put our gaskets in and put everything back, and hopefully it makes a difference. So I've loosened up these copper air lines, and now I'm just going to try and pull these head bolts. So I'm carefully going to pull up our head. There's one part. And there's this part. And there are our pistons. So here's a look at the pistons and the cylinders. Looks like every time this wheel goes around, these guys pump. Every time I guess the wheel goes around, it looks like the pistons, each one goes up one full time. So I'm going to clean off this extra gasket, clean this out. Our cylinders really look nice. There's a little bit of oil up in here, debris. As far as the head itself, there's like some valves in here and some dirt. I'm gonna actually this thing's pretty small. I'm gonna throw it in the ultrasonic cleaner and get all the debris off of here and clean it up, scrape it down. And same with this thing. I'll throw that in the ultrasonic cleaner, get it real good. And I'm going to loosen up these bolts because this is where my leak is down here. And we'll try and pull that off and see how that goes. Alright, I removed the 6 lower bolts. Really took a while because I couldn't put like a ratchet in there to do it. I could turn about 1/3 of a turn. Just loosening this up. This is going to have to come straight up because the pistons are in it. And I'm going to change all the oil out as well. Man, that thing is pretty well on there. I think this thing's only made out of aluminum. Yeah, I don't know the best way to pop this thing off. Alright, I've been doing a little bit of investigating, and this is a magnet, and I figured out this is machined so nice. I thought it might be aluminum, but it's steel, so it's a lot stronger than I thought. So I'm just taking a cold chisel and I'm tapping on the bottom, and I just loosened up. I saw the gasket on that end has moved. Now I'm going to try and get the front side, hoping I can get it with this pulley on here, but I might not be able to. Thing's really on there. There we go. So I broke it loose. Wasn't too bad, but probably the last time that was put on there was at the factory. And I'm just going to try and lift this cylinder up, and hopefully the pistons stay. There we go. And I did mark which way that cylinder goes, so I know how to get it back on. So at this point I'm just going to use my oil extractor, and I'm going to pull this nasty looking oil out of here. So we'll drain that out. And then I think I'll put like a rag in here to try and keep debris from getting into this reservoir, because I'm going to have to clean this gasket surface. So what I've elected to do is take a large plastic bag, very big plastic bag. I already did this once, and now I'm doing it a second time, and I'm just tucking it in here. That way any debris I can catch in the plastic bag, and it won't get stuck down inside the engine block on this compressor. So I think by double bagging it with large bags, that should stop most debris. And I think once I finish this thing up, I'll blow the debris with an air compressor, and then I will remove the bags. So as far as cleaning off the gasket material, generally I'd use a drill and a wire brush, but I want to try and keep as much debris out of the engine block here as possible. So I'm just using a scraper and just taking my time. I sprayed it with some brake parts cleaner to kind of loosen up the old gasket material, and that seems to have worked. So I'm just going to work my way around and clean this up. Here's the underside of the cylinder. I'm just scraping off the remaining gasket, and then I'll hit this on my wire brush once I get most of the gasket off. Alright, so I removed that bag that was in there, and this is my bottom gasket that goes on the cylinder. So I'm just going to drop that on there, and I guess I'll set these pistons so one's up and one's down. That way I can work on one at a time. Now, this is either going to be real easy or real difficult. I'm not quite sure. I'm oiling up the cylinder. I cleaned it out with compressed air. And I did mark it So there's my indication. So this is the way it goes on. Now, as I said, the bottom of this thing, and I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see this, but this is chamfered. So it should go on. Problem is this cylinder is pretty heavy. It's cast iron, so I'm just trying to hold that so I can get those rings there started, and I just can't tell why this guy's stuck. Something's not. And if I just, oh, there we go. So we got that one. I'm pulling it up a little bit. Alright, so now we want to align the other one. So I have to gradually work it down, keep it level. So I think I have that second piston at least in line and straight. There we go. Now it's sliding up there, and at this point just going to line up our gasket. Probably should have checked that the gasket fit right before this point, but at this point it is fitting from the looks of things, and I'm going to get this thing bolted down. So I tightened up the bolts, and I'm just taking a look at the pistons and making sure that they're moving properly as they should, and they do seem to be. So at this point, so far so good. So to clean the tops of the pistons, which are aluminum, I've got some oil on top of them, and I'm just taking a Scotch-Brite pad and just lightly trying to work any carbon, or I guess it's carbon, off of them. So as you can see, that's cleaning up nice, and it's soft enough that it's not going to damage anything. They weren't too dirty to begin with, but just taking a little extra time to shine them up. So now at this point, I'm going to remove this round plate on the front of the compressor, which is held on by 4 7/16 bolts. And I got a gasket that came with that, so, or that came for that. So I might as well replace that while we're doing the work here. All these bolts are rusted, but they're, wanted to make sure it didn't break before I said anything. They're all rusted, but none of them broke off or anything, so that's good news. I'm hoping that the bearing comes out of here okay. There's our 4 bolts. Alright, I'm gonna try and get this plate. You can see it's moving slightly. There we go. And hopefully this thing comes off of here. Yeah, the bearing's hooked up to it. We're just going to keep prying at it. Man, that bearing looks beautiful. And this thing doesn't look like it was leaking, but like I said, I have the gasket, so might as well replace it. Here's a look at my pieces. I gave them a wire brushing to try and get the remaining gasket off. And now what I'm going to do is take these things and throw them in my ultrasonic cleaner, and we'll let that clean them out and get them looking real good. Originally this compressor didn't work. I'm going to run this thing on several 6-minute cycles, maybe about 4 or 5 of them, and I'm using heated water, and I just have some purple power degreaser in there. As I'm cleaning the head, I noticed, there's these intake and exhaust valves. You can pull out a snap ring and all the different parts in here. I have one apart right here, so it consists of a snap ring and a couple pieces along with the spring. These all have a little bit of pitted rust on them. I think they need to spin in there and move real freely. So I'm taking the time to clean all this stuff up lightly with sandpaper. The springs look good, and these parts don't look that bad. So I'm just going to go through and clean them and then reinstall them. And also up here there's some sort of valve on each side that consists of a snap ring and another spring and a O-ring. I don't know how well these were working, but I'm just going to clean the rust out of these, make sure everything's seating properly, and reinstall those when I'm done. And here's a look at everything. I did get it back together and all cleaned up. Everything went back together real nicely. Everything cleaned up nice and looks good. So it's time to reinstall with the gaskets.